Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Texas Women Photographers Circle. This is our monthly meetup. And here with me this evening are my moderators, Brandy Koch. She's based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Sue Pitts is in Georgetown, and Charlie Hickman is in San Antonio. And every month, I invite a guest to share their photography and some of their favorite tips and techniques to help us improve our photography and inspire us to try something new. The schedule for upcoming presentations is on my website at lindanickell.com, as well as the links to previous sessions on YouTube. Tonight's guest is Cheri Freeman. Cheri is a Central Texas-based photographer, and her primary focus is on nature and wildlife photography, which brings her a sense of connection and joy to the natural world. Cheri was a recent featured photographer at the Texas Photography Festival, and her work has been featured in local and international exhibitions such as Cancer, Never Give Up, and Solos, the 7th International Solo Exhibitions. And I'm going to be biased and say it's my favorite, the Texas Through Her Lens exhibition, which I got to curate for the Williamson Museum. If you're on Instagram, look for her at Images by Cheri Freeman, and you can connect with her through her website, cherifreeman.com. Cheri, it's nice to have you here.
Thank you, Linda. I appreciate you having me. Really excited to be here. Anytime I can talk about photography and people don't get mad or bored or, they want to hear about it, that's exciting. That's a great day for me.
That's why, when I joke, I've found my people. My mom is kind of tired of my photos. My friends are like, yeah, we know it's the great bird picture. But the people that like to do what I like to do are the ones that get excited, and they're the ones that fuel us to get out there even more. And if we're really good at it, we drag them along with us. So you're somebody that I met a couple of years ago through Instagram. And then when I got to meet you in person, it's like, oh yeah, that's her. You are a nice, kind, talented photographer, and it's been a joy to kind of see your photography progress. Just from a couple of years ago, and to see what you're doing now, and to have the opportunity to be a featured photographer at the festival was awesome. So thank you for putting yourself out there and challenging yourself to do more and learn more. And here you are doing a presentation for me. So I so appreciate it.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I actually did, for those of you that don't know, I didn't start photography until lockdown in 2020. I never had any inkling towards photography, never thought about it. But I was going stir crazy during lockdown. There wasn't a lot of work to do. You couldn't leave the house. And I took an iPhone photography class and I fell in love. I took pictures of anything, everything in the house, outside the house, back roads, it was all outside because you couldn't do anything. But I actually just fell in love with it. And I think my niche ended up I say it the Texas way, my niche ended up being nature photography. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now and kind of just jump into that part. Okay, can y'all see that?
You can. There you go.
Okay,
Perfect.
great. Okay, so yeah, I think the reason that I kind of settled into nature photography is because of how being out in nature made me feel. It just made me happy. I loved being out there. I found myself craving, getting back out there with my camera. And I think a lot of it is just, the connection to nature, the joy, the peace, all the stresses and everything just kind of melt away, and you've got your camera and you're focused on something else other than the problems in the world. And so it really gave me a lot of peace and joy. And I think that's kind of why I just kind of keep going back to that, because that's what really makes me happy. And then I also discovered in, okay, advance, please. In doing the nature photography, it's more than just capturing a picture of what you saw. I discovered that there's a lot more to it than that, and a lot of it is how you present it. So sometimes when we shoot in nature, we just want to document it, or maybe we want to share that moment with our friends and family. Um, it can be very educational, not just for the photographer, because I know I like to take pictures of things and then go home and look it up and research it. What was that and why did it do that? And it's super interesting. But then we can also share that with others. Even if it's just a couple of sentences in a blurb on social media, we're sharing that education with others, and that helps others to connect to nature. And it can help bring awareness about nature and conservation as well. It certainly inspires awe. If you look at a sunrise or a sunset or a beautiful landscape, it's certainly awe-inspiring. We can tell stories with our nature photos. Nature teaches us lots of lessons. Butterflies are my big ones. They teach us a lot of lessons. They teach me a lot of lessons anyway. So this photo here on the right, I call her Raggedy Ann, and she's a Gulf fritillary that I captured at the Zilker Botanical Garden a couple of years ago. And I just took a picture of her because she's just symbolized perseverance. Her wings were just all torn up and tattered, and she looked old and tired, but she was still fluttering around. And so this was actually the picture that was in the cancer exhibit, Never Give Up. So I like the lessons that we can learn from observing nature. And then, of course, as I mentioned, it creates joy, but not just for the photographer, but it creates joy for the people who view your images, because let's face it, not everybody can get out. I have friends that are homebound, bedridden, they can't get out into the parks and things, that maybe not even their backyard, to enjoy nature. And so this helps other people to experience a little bit of that joy as well. And so when folks tell me that they enjoy my pictures, it makes them happy, it puts a smile on their face, that's just like the icing on the cake for me. Before we start talking about some of the different types of nature photography, like you were talking about earlier, Linda, I did want to get into a little bit about scouting and shooting with intention. So I do like to scout out areas. If it's not like a park that's close to my house or something, I'm going to take the time to drive there. I want to know a little bit more about it, especially if I have something specific I want to shoot. And so I found social media to be a great scouting tool. I use Facebook groups. So there's like Birds of Texas is a great group if you're into birding photography. There's groups for almost all the parks out there. One of the parks I'm going to talk about tonight actually has a birding group just for that park. So you can get a lot of information there. I also use hashtags on Instagram. And I know they're not quite as useful as they used to be. They've kind of changed that up a little bit, but they're still pretty darn useful. So I will use hashtags to find things that I'm looking for. Google Maps, love Google Maps. So if I'm going to go to a location, I'll check it out on Google Maps. If you scroll down to kind of where the review section is, there's photos and videos, and you can sort it by the most recent. So I can see, are the flowers blooming? Is the water level up? Is the river dry? What are other people taking pictures of? I can look at different times of the year. And so I find that Google Maps is a really great scouting tool. And then lastly, we don't want to forget our friends and family. Let our friends and family know what we want to shoot, because they will scout for you and they will let you know what they find out. And I've got a couple of great examples of that here a little bit later. So the first thing in nature photography that I wanted to talk about is landscapes. And I don't consider myself a landscape photographer at all. I spend 90% of my time with a zoom lens or macro lens. But I do keep a wide angle lens in my bag. And if I know I'm going to a scenic location or on a vacation or something, I'll take that out to the lake and kind of brush up and practice with it so that I can try to be prepared for landscape. It is something I need to practice more with. Um, in this case, this photo was taken in Rockport, Texas. Again, I was scouting the area because I was going down there for the Hummingbird Festival a couple of Septembers ago. I actually learned about the Hummingbird Festival on a Dave Attenborough documentary. And I was super excited that it was in Texas. And so I started looking that up. And so I planned a trip down there. And while I was looking at sites about Rockport, I kept seeing these beautiful sunrise and sunset pictures with the water and the boats and all of that. So I knew that, even though I was going to shoot hummingbirds, I wanted to get a good sunrise or a sunset. And so when I got there, I quickly realized it was going to have to be a sunrise because on the bay side where the sun set, it was all subdivisions and private properties. So my first morning, I drove out along the edge of the water looking for a place with a pier. I knew I wanted that pier with the leading lines and all that. And they were mostly all private, but I did see a bait shop that had a little parking area and this cool pier with this gate at the end of it. And I was so excited, and I'm like waiting for the sun to come up. I get my camera out, and I had forgotten, I grew up on the coast, I had forgotten that when you're in the air conditioning and then you go out in that hot, humid air, your lens is going to fog up. So I tried all morning to get my lens cleaned, and it just kept fogging right back up. And so I had to do the whole thing again the second morning. And that time I put my camera bag out on the patio, let it acclimate to the weather, got in the car, did not turn the air conditioner on, and drove to my spot. I knew where it was now. And this was the glorious sunrise that I was blessed with. It was just, my jaw dropped. It was just beautiful. So I was able to capture this picture. Now I love, love getting those starbursts, those sunbursts with the rays. So I did tighten that f-stop down as tight as it would go so I could get those rays. And of course, that will make your foreground real dark. So in post-processing, I brought the light back up in the foreground. The thing I like about this picture, and I guess it's true of all photographs and any kind of artwork, the photographer, the artist kind of has, something in mind when they do it. It has meaning for them. So when I see this picture, it kind of takes me back in time to that morning. But when other people see this picture, it means something completely different to them. So some people will see this picture and say, oh, it looks like Heaven's Gate. And other people will say, well, it's like a path leading to, something brighter and better, So everybody has a different take on it. And that's with all kinds of art. So it's interesting to see what other people get out of a picture or what that meaning is. So that said, I'm going to ask you guys to drop a comment for me and let me know what you see in this picture, what it means to you. And I'll look at those comments a little bit later. So this was a really fun picture to do. In fact, this was the picture that was in your exhibit. And then this landscape is at Big Bend National Park. Oops, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Is at Big Bend National Park. This is the famous window scene. I'm sure you've all seen hundreds of pictures of the window, but this was my first time to see the window. I have born and raised in Texas, had never been to Big Bend National Park. So this was February of 2023. And this was just beautiful. It was gorgeous. It was very different. The first day we were there, we were in the Bukias Canyon. It was hot. It was desert. There wasn't a lot of wildlife around. But the second day we were up in the Chisos Mountains. Here, this was the Basin Loop Trail, I believe it's called. And it was like a whole different park. It was green, the air was cool and crisp. And it was just absolutely gorgeous. Now, it was hazy, so you might notice on the inset, that's a picture my friend took with her cell phone of me shooting the window. And it was hazy. There were signs in the park that said the haze is caused from air pollution. So the air pollution kind of blows in. The last day we were there was kind of like a storm coming, and it kind of blew all that out, and the skies were just a brilliant blue. They were just breathtaking. So I did do some dehazing on this picture in post-processing, so we could really see the colors and the shades and everything. And I took this with my wide angle lens, of course. I made sure that little trail over on the right was in there. And I've had people ask me, why would you do that? Because it's distracting. But for me, this is part of my experience, because I had just huffed it up that trail and I wanted to be sure that trail was in there in that scene. And so, this is kind of part of what I do when I'm presenting my photographs. Is I want to share the experience with people, and it's really hard to do because the camera doesn't see as well as your eyes do, and it's hard to express that. But I want to share the whole experience, and so when I'm presenting my photos, I try to kind of share what I saw with my heart, not just with my eyes. And the last landscape is fall foliage. Believe it or not, this was taken right here in Texas, and it was not at the Lost Maples. This is an example of where you want to let your friends and family know what you're interested in shooting. So my friend Mickey knew that I wanted to shoot fall foliage that fall, which was a couple of years back. And she happened to see an article online about some of the places to see fall foliage in Texas. And one of them was this hidden gem, it called it. And it's called the Ruby Mize Azalea Garden in Nacogdoches, Texas, near Stephen F. Austin University. And it truly is a hidden gem. I used all my scouting tools and I couldn't find a whole lot about it. I was really surprised that there weren't more photos of it. I follow Felicia. I don't know her last name, but she lives in East Texas, and she had a few pictures. And there were a couple on the Google Maps. But I did find out enough information to know that I needed to go Thanksgiving weekend. That would be peak time for me to go. And sure enough, these Japanese maples were on fire. They were just absolutely gorgeous. So it's called an azalea garden. It's full of azaleas. A few were blooming even in the fall, but of course in the springtime it would be full of azaleas. But in the fall, these Japanese maples are ablaze. They're just gorgeous. And they also have tons of camellias that are blooming as well that time of year. And so those are really pretty too. So this was a lot of fun. It was a great little quick trip for me. And as a little bonus, this picture was chosen last fall for the Keller Williams Realty mail out. So they mailed out postcards with this picture on it to, I don't know how many thousands of homes for their fall mail out. So I was pretty excited about that. So those are all the examples of the landscape. When it comes to wildlife, we kind of have to be open-minded because we can go out to shoot something in particular and it may not show up. So we kind of have to be a little bit more open-minded and often be open to just shooting the ordinary. So in this case, this was just a local park. It's just a squirrel, an ordinary squirrel. I was actually shooting a turtle and my dad was with me, and he noticed the squirrel was on this log kind of thinking about coming down for a drink of water. And sure enough, we waited a while and the squirrel came on down and got a drink of water, and I got that nice little bit of a reflection. So that was a really fun photo to take. This was when I maybe had my camera a couple of months when I got a real camera. So, this is just an ordinary day, an ordinary squirrel at my local park, but it ended up being a really nice, nice shot that I really enjoyed. And then this was last spring. This was an example of very scouting with a very specific target in mind. I knew I wanted to get a painted bunting last spring, and I actually started scouting the spring before that because I have never seen a painted bunting, much less photographed one. And so I kind of started stalking the Birds of Texas and some of the other groups in the parks and trying to figure out, where do these birds come in? I know they have them in Georgetown. People tell me they see them, but I've never seen them anywhere around here. So I started getting involved in those groups and everything and watching. And so then the following spring, I started really honing in on those groups and looking to see who's starting to post pictures and where they're at. And there were some coming into this park in Cibolo, which is near Seguin, outside of San Antonio, and it's called the Crescent Bend Nature Park. It kind of reminds me of Berry Springs in Georgetown. It's like a park and preserve. And they have a couple of bird blinds set up there by volunteers, really nice ones. And so I played hooky from work and drove down there one day. I waited 4 hours for this bird to come in, and the birders in that park they're regulars, and they are super helpful and super kind. And this fellow that was in the blind with me found out that I drove 2 hours to see this bird, and it looked like I was going home without my bird. And he got up, he said, "Let's fix that." Pulled a key out of his pocket and opened up a seed bin, got some fresh seed, spread it out for me, and sure enough, my painted bunting came in. And so I was super, super happy to get that. And then I got a chance to see more painted buntings later in the summer. This was at Hummer House in Cristobal, Texas, which is about 15 minutes outside of San Angelo. My dad found this place for me. So he knew that I liked hummingbirds. He knew I liked painted buntings. And he was watching the Bucket List, which is a show about Texas. For those of you that aren't in Texas, it's a show about places to go and see in Texas. And so he called me up on a Saturday afternoon and said, "I just saw this place on the bucket list. It's got painted buntings and it's got a bunch of hummingbirds, and you can stay there. It's somewhere around San Angelo." So within a couple of hours, I had found the place and booked a cottage for the middle of the week, the last 2 days they had left in the season, because the painted buntings leave there the last week of July. And so I was able to go and not only see the painted buntings, which they have hundreds of, they have the largest population of black-chinned hummingbirds in the state. This is a private property. They have thousands of hummingbirds every year that come through there. And so this was the shot of the trip. I just loved it with I got the little water drop in midair and the birds in midair taking a sip, and the flowers kind of framed it over on the left, added a little color to it. So I actually had a naming contest for this picture. A friend of mine named her Walela, which means hummingbird in Cherokee. So that's what she ended up being titled, is Walela. But if you guys are ever in the San Angelo area between April and July on the weekend, go visit this place on every Saturday morning from 9 to 12. It's open to the public, free of charge. They have the hummingbird banding, so you can actually watch them band the hummingbirds, and they tell you all about the process. I was just there 2 weeks ago, and I actually got to see this part. You can hold the hummingbird and release the hummingbird if you want to. They have an education session in a little short one in the observation room, where you can sit and also watch the birds come in. They have other birds as well, lots of tanagers and vermilion flycatchers and lots of other birds as well. It's just a beautiful, beautiful location, and just a great overall experience. So encourage you, if you get a chance to go out that way, to visit them. The owners are just sweethearts as well. And then, of course, we have to expect the unexpected. You never know what you're going to find. I know on the picture on the left, I had driven to a place also outside of San Antonio called Warbler Woods. and it's a private property that is a bird sanctuary, and the owners allow visitors to come in. They ask for donations. You can walk around the place. There's trails, but behind the house they have a pond, and they call it Warbler Pond. So of course it's the warblers that are the big attraction there. They call it Warbler Woods, and that's what I went to shoot, was warblers, and I was hoping to shoot the black and white warbler. Well, we didn't see a whole lot. It was extremely hot. It was August, but there were supposed to be a lot of warblers there. So we ended up having lunch in the bird blind at the pond. We could hear the warblers all above us in the trees, but they never would come down to the pond because the Cooper's hawk was staking out the pond, hoping for a warbler lunch. So I settled for some photographs of the Cooper's hawk, and he seemed to be posing really nicely for me there. So it was not a lost trip. It was still a lot of fun, and I came away with a nice photo. And on the right, I had gone down to Crescent Bend Nature Park again, this time to shoot owls. They had a couple of little barred owls there. I did not see the owls that day. I didn't see very many birds at all that day, but this little buck and doe came walking up into the blind area. Didn't seem to notice us or anything. And all of a sudden, the little buck looks up and we make eye contact. And this is the moment I got this shot. And he's just adorable. I call this one Velvet and Eyelashes because his horns are still in velvet and he's got these gorgeous long eyelashes. So, I guess the moral of the story is we scout with intention. We have all these plans, but when it comes to wildlife, we have to be prepared that, maybe we want to take a picture of something else, and we're still going to have a successful, fun day. Flowers are great subjects. They don't scratch or move or run away or turn their backs to you. About the biggest problem you might have is outdoors if it's windy. And you can do it year round. So the photo on the left is a orchid. This was at the orchid show up at the Fort Worth Botanical Garden a couple of springs ago. And I took that photo with a macro lens. It's awesome because, the flowers aren't moving. There's not even any wind because it's in this like pyramid. And so I was able to get really in there close with that macro lens and see the little tendrils at the center of the flower and those beautiful little water drops. I had a friend that was with me, and she was going around finding all the flowers with water drops for me. I actually did take another photo of this flower, and I kind of blew up just the white part and made a background for that to kind of and put them together for that kind of the soft, dreamy look. And then the photo on the right is also an orchid, and that came from HEB, the local supermarket. So with flowers, you can get them anywhere, even if it's the winter and you don't have flowers in your yard or there's no flowers at the park, you can always go to the supermarket or your local florist and get some flowers. I took this one. It was in the evening, the golden hour, the light was perfect. I grabbed my flower and went out there and set it kind of up on a bench in front of some greenery. And I think I took this one with my zoom lens because I wanted to focus in on the flower and kind of have the background just kind of fade out. So flowers are a lot of fun. These were moms I got at the florist in the fall, and they kind of been spent at this point, but I kind of loved that look where they were kind of faded and then the petals were falling off. And so I put them on this wooden table and set up some light, which was, I think, a lantern and a flashlight because I don't have any fancy lighting. I played around with that, and I just used my little kit lens inside the house and kind of came up with kind of an antique looking still life. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a fun activity to do inside. You can always shoot flowers when you can't get outside, or if you just don't have, it's not the time of year for a lot of flowers. This one was also shot with a macro lens. This is in the pond, the lily pond, in front of the entrance to Zilker Botanical Garden. And I really liked shooting that one with the macro. I think I used a couple of different lenses, but I like the macro lens. I felt like I could really hone in on those details. I like the petals where they kind of dip into the water there. Um, and so speaking of macro and using macro lenses, I like to do close-up photography. I do it with either a macro lens or a zoom lens. These two were taken with a macro, and macro lenses are great for things that you can get really close to and things that don't move or they don't move very much. Um, so it worked really well for this orchid on the left. That was an orchid also at the orchid show. But look at the little face inside the center of the orchid. Like, who knew that orchids have these little bug faces inside of them? And we started looking at so a lot of the different varieties of orchids have these little faces. Without my macro lens, I wouldn't have ever even noticed that or seen it. And
Sherry,
so, uh-huh.
let me interrupt because you bleeped out. So I got a little,
Oh,
on my end, silence. So can you just start over with the talking about that orchid and the bug face? Because
oh,
I don't
yes.
miss it. Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, so I shot this one with a macro lens, and this was the orchid at the same orchid show as the previous photo. And I was just saying that, you know, without the macro lens, I wouldn't have ever known that these orchids oftentimes have these tiny little faces that resemble insects. And it was pretty amazing when we started looking at them. You could see the little faces in many of the different species of the orchids. And this was kind of where the education thing comes in. So when I came home, I looked up, you know, why do orchids have bug faces inside them? And it turns out it's like a survival tactic. It's mimicry where they are designed to have this little bug face so they lure an insect in to pollinate them. So it's like a survival tactic, but really cool, something I would have never known or seen without using a macro lens. And then the photo on the right is a little jumping spider in my backyard. I don't usually the jumping spiders like run around to the back side of the stem or whatever it is. They're very shy with me, but this one didn't seem to be too shy, and I was able to go in and get my macro lens out of the house and come back out, and he stayed there long enough for me to get probably quite a few shots to be able to get this one. Um, but you know, with the macro lens, you can see his little eyes and the reflection and the little hairs. And I have to credit someone who's not here tonight, I don't think, Mika Geiger. I started following her on Instagram early on, and she inspired me to go. I got a macro lens for my phone. That's how I started doing macro, was with a macro lens on my phone. Um, and it just kind of opens up a whole new world to you. So if you have any interest at all, I think you might be interested in doing macro work, but you don't want to maybe invest in a lens right away. You can get the little Moment macro lens for your cell phone and play around with that. You can get extension tubes for your regular camera that are really inexpensive and play around with it and see if you like it before you make the jump into a full macro lens. But I highly recommend it if you're into nature photography, because it is a lot of fun and you see so many things that you would never see otherwise. And then I also do close-up stuff with my zoom lens. Most of the zoom lenses nowadays have this close focus feature. So you can be far away, but when you use the close focus feature, you can really fine tune the focus on your subject and then take your shot without getting so close to the subject that you scare it away. Because some of these things, not only are they moving, but they're not going to stay put if you get too close. That dragonfly would not have stayed put if I got 8 inches away from it. So these are kind of the best the situations where you can do some close-up photography, but not get so close that you scare your subject away. If you use that close focus feature, you can get a really sharp focus on your subject And then even when you crop in, you've still got some great sharp photos. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is backyard photography. We are entering this scorching Texas summer. It's already hot as it can be out there. Last summer, all of these photos are from last summer that were taken in my backyard. And if y'all remember, for those that aren't from Texas, we had well over 100 degrees for like 60 days in a row, maybe longer. I don't know. It was just relentless. And it was absolutely unsafe to be spending a lot of time outside. Even in my own backyard, I couldn't spend a whole lot of time out there, much less go out to a park and hike around. So I spent a lot of time looking out my dining room window with my camera, hoping for a butterfly to fly in or a bird or something. And then I would go outside and shoot for a few minutes and then come back in and cool off again. So the picture at the top was a bug that my dog discovered, and he was barking and carrying on. So I was like, oh, thank you, Snow, and got my camera and laid in the grass and kind of scooched backwards while the bug ran towards me and got that photo. I was really excited about the crab spider because they're very hard to get because they're tiny, tiny, but they're also kind of transparent. So I think this was a little bit easier because it was on that blue flower and there was some nice contrast. The caterpillar up there, I had planted some parsley on my porch. And one morning I looked out and there were 5 caterpillars on it. I was so happy. Those 3 were all taken with a macro lens. And then all the pictures across the bottom were taken in my backyard with a zoom lens. But I ended up with some really nice photos just from my backyard. And what a great way to practice. So you're stuck at home and you can't get out and shoot, you don't have to go anywhere. You can shoot right in your own yard. It's amazing what is out there if you just kind of open your eyes and look for it. So if I know we have a lot of nature lovers here tonight, but if there's anybody here that maybe isn't all that into nature photography, I encourage you to give it a shot because you might just fall in love with it like I did. And that is it. This is my contact information. My website is cherifreeman.com. It's more like a link tree. So if you go there, you can click on my online gallery, any special offers I have, sign up for emails, things like that. I also have some of my work hanging in a local gallery in Georgetown. So that's a lot of fun. And if you ever get an opportunity to do that, it's a lot of fun. You really connect with a lot of other artists and get to interact with the public a lot more too. And then my socials, images by Cher, not Cheri, but Cher, because that's what was available for my Facebook page. And then there's my Instagram. And my email is cheri@cherifreeman.com.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I love you're very welcome. Thank you. Actually, let me come back and say thank you for doing this. Let me ask you to take your screen down.
Okay.
Yeah, ladies, feel free to drop some questions in there. I didn't see any as we were scrolling through. Lots and lots of nice comments, and I'm definitely going to share this with you so that you can take a peek, Cheri.
Okay.
Make sure. I like where you say, well, that's about all. And I'm like, Cheri, this was a lot of great content. And so I'm so pleased with your presentation. I knew it was going to be good, but I wasn't sure what it was going to get. And one photo after the next photo is better than the previous one. And these aren't things that I necessarily see on your Instagram. So they were nice surprises to see something, that I hadn't seen yet. So first of all, thank you for coming and doing this for us. This is part of building a community. And if just one person walks away with an idea that they can do something similar or try a technique or bring a flower inside, that's a home run for us. So thank you for sharing. It's I've actually been out with you when you're looking at stuff, and I can watch you look at a milkweed plant and run out there and check things out, and you're just completely focused on what you're doing and what you're looking for. And one of the things I want to point out that I my observation of you, it's not just about the pretty picture. You give a damn about um, what we're doing to our environment. Just you care about milkweed. You know, that was a conversation that we kind of had a couple of weeks ago, that you were just livid, and then you reeled yourself back in. But that's what photography can do for a community. It's showing people what's out there. And a lot of people don't see these little jumping spiders. Oh, they're scared of spiders. And then they see this cute little jumping spider that's not going to hurt them. And you introduce somebody to a new idea. And as nature photographers, I don't want to say that that is our a responsibility, but it sure is a perk of getting dirty and getting sweaty and getting the opportunity to explore, whether it is in your back door, right out the back door, or you're traveling. So thank you for bringing this presentation, this group. Thank you for sharing a lot of beautiful photos. And I'm just going to scroll through here real quick. I don't see any questions, and if I miss them, I'm sorry about that. But I'll you'll get to see the chat, and you can reach out to people. But with that, I'm going to ask you: are there any? If you could just say one thing to a photographer, what would it be?
Oh wow, you didn't prepare me for that.
My moderators are sitting there going, "Phew, we're gonna throw it when she picks on." I
I
mean,
would say open your eyes. Open your eyes and start looking. I would say practice. I think that's kind of a given. You need to practice, right? Practice,
mhm,
practice, practice. That's great. The more you practice, the more you're going to see, though. So
right,
open your eyes. That was the thing I think that really struck me when I started doing it. All the stuff I saw that I never saw before.
yeah,
Because with my camera, I'm looking for things.
right, and
And it
especially
opens up a whole new world. It really does.
right. And especially in nature, the things are little. So you have to go slow. You have to like really kind of pay attention to what you're doing and what you might be stepping on. And it just I don't know, it's just kind of a whole um niche of really cool opportunities. So somebody came in a little late, and she was afraid that maybe she missed what maybe if you'd said what camera system you used. You didn't say anything about it, but
Oh,
do you mind sharing
I
that with?
didn't. Yeah. I'm not
Okay.
into all the technical stuff, so
Yeah.
I don't
That's
even
good.
think about talking about my camera
No,
or what kind of lens or I couldn't tell you what the settings were, but I
that's
started out with a Nikon D3300. It was a used camera I got from my sister. It was a great
okay.
starter camera. Then I went to a Sony mirrorless crop sensor because I knew I needed more zoom with less weight because I have a bad shoulder. And
Yeah,
then last fall, I switched to the OM system, which is a micro four thirds. Lots of wildlife photographers are using it. And I really, really like that system.
perfect. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Sherry, thank you for doing this. I know I've said thank you a couple of times, but sincerely, um, when I'm um, trying to find speakers and trying to figure out what kind of topics would appeal to attendees. Nature is close to my heart, and I have listened to so many nature photographers, and you've topic is the same, but the message is delivered just a little differently, and it's inspiring, and it's inspiring to me. And I listened to a lot. I think you kind of know. I spent a lot of time on Instagram. I spent a lot of time with other photographers, and so you have a special message. And I hope that when someone else reaches out to you and says, "Hey, would you come do a presentation?" you'll consider doing another presentation. So
Okay.
yeah, so I'm just laying the groundwork for, maybe coming back. So, and ladies, that's how it works. All right. Until next time, I hope that you get a chance to get out with your camera. I know it's hot, but go out anyway. And